One more rest, please, then I'll be quite ready to continue. Sprezio sighed loudly as he ran a hand over one of his twisted black horns. This would waste more precious time. Yes, let's just make this quick. Oi, you lot heard the tender lad. His precious bleeding pups need a rest. Britomar, a hulking mountain of a woman, turned to what was left of a long dead tree on the side of the path, toppling it with a swift kick. There you go, a proper throne for his lordship, she said, bending into a mocking half-curtsy. Here, child, wrap the soles of your feet in these, Ukushaza said, as he handed the young lord a roll of bandages made from woven plant fiber. The natural oils will soothe any blistering and cushion your steps. Ukushaza, as a large bipedal turtle, was an imposing figure in his own right, with his battle-scarred shell and sharp claws that could just as easily tear someone's face off as they could hand them a roll of bandages. Yet the young Lord Siegfried could not help but be put at ease by his gentle nature. Lord Siegfried wrinkled his nose, gingerly took the roll, then began wrapping a bootless foot. When he was finished, he breathed a sigh of relief. Ah, that already feels better. Thank you, Mr. Ukushaza. And it is my pleasure to share the medicinal bounties of nature with a person in need of them. Sprezio massaged his temples. Yes, very good. Let's get moving as quickly as possible. We really shouldn't be out here after dark, especially when only one of us here can see in it. Sprezio's eyes darted back and forth. Even though they had made great pains to ensure that their escort mission through the swamplands would run smoothly, paying a hefty bribe to the local lizardmen tribes to leave them alone, Sprezio couldn't help but feel that they were being watched. Everyone began checking their gear and making ready to move. Suddenly, Trina, a young halfling, let out a squeal. Oh, look at that wee little hopper! She pointed to a frog in the path that was facing the group and croaking loudly. As she moved closer toward it, the frog began croaking more loudly than before, planting itself firmly in front of the group. Oi, listen to him, peep. You'd think he was calling out to his friends at... Wait a tick. Britomar quieted her compatriots, scanning their swampy surroundings. The sound of croaking around them started to get louder and closer. Form up, lads. I think we've got company. She unsheathed her huge claymore. Just keep yourself behind me and the Empress, and you should be fine, Lord Fancy Boots. The Empress? Aye, that sword of hers is practically royalty. The amount of poor souls it's sentenced to death, Trina said, a sly grin spreading across her small face as she drew a short blade and a shorter dagger. Sprezio quickly rummaged through his satchel, producing a rolled piece of parchment with a lightly shimmering seal. You know, I have been meaning to find a reason to give this one a try. All at once, there was a series of loud splashes as humanoid frogs seemingly materialized from the bark of the swamp's abundant mangrove trees. The battalion of bipedal batrachians pointed their primitive spears at the party members' faces, their throats bulging up and down as they croaked loudly to each other. Sprezio recognized immediately that they were surrounded by bullywugs. All this time, he was so worried about the lizard folk that he never considered bullywugs as a possible threat. Perhaps they could negotiate. But before either party could attempt a parley, Sprezio saw the weighty heft of the Empress come down on the biggest bullywug's head. Gods damn it, not again, Sprezio said as he broke the seal on the scroll he held and recited the incantation. Rays of multicolored light sprang from his palm, dazzling and blinding the bullywugs in front of them. Now, Britomar, what did we say about waiting before swinging? Ukushaza said, in a scolding yet amused tone, as he slammed the bottom of his staff to the ground. A cascade of vines sprouted and grabbed at the nearest bullywugs. One of the frogmen leapt high into the air, sending itself over the melee and crashing down on top of Trina, knocking her backwards to the ground as she blocked its spear from striking her skull. Yeah, B, Trina said in a strained voice as she pushed the assailant off with her feet. You gotta start listening more. Britomar simply laughed as she continued to swing her hulking weapon, cutting down the blinded bullywugs as the others scattered and leapt out of the way of her surprisingly swift slashes. Guards! A little help! Please! Sprezio turned to see what would have been a rather hilarious sight, if they were not in danger of losing their charge. Siegfried was halfway inside the mouth of a giant toad, the size of a small horse. A bulbous bullywug rider, clad in rusted mail, was perched on its back. Behind came more riders, hopping towards the group while waving bolos and nets above their heads as they hooted and hollered in their throaty dialect. Before Sprezio could react, the young lord was swallowed whole. Bleeding hells! Sprezio thought, running towards the spot the young lord used to be. He didn't have time to grab a scroll. He'd have to chance it. Stay strong, young lord. I'm coming to save you. Sprezio's eyes glowed white as he manipulated the weave, pointing a finger towards the riders and their mounts. Suddenly, just as he was about to complete the spell, his body was filled with a tingling, prickly sensation. The light in his eyes began flickering different colors. Damn it, not a surge, not now! Sprezio attempted to concentrate, but was suddenly overcome with the overwhelming need to sneeze. Achoo! A bolt of lightning surged straight through one of the bullywug cavalry and its steed, reducing them both to mounds of smoldering, crackling flesh. Well, that certainly could have been... The last word came out as a wheeze, as the closest giant toad slammed its head into his chest, sending him sailing into the muck. He rolled to his hands and knees as he tried to catch his breath, but could only get in short, sharp gasps. Looking towards his friends, he attempted a warning, but the only sound that left his lips were labored, truncated groans. Sprezio could only watch as one by one the other members of his party were captured. Trina was first, as a smaller toad's tongue shot across the battlefield, grabbed her leg, and pulled her into its maw. Ukushaza pointed an open hand at the ground under two of the bullywug cavalry. The earth trembled and fissured, echoing with the sound of the guttural syllables he'd chanted. One toad and its rider were drawn into the collapsing soil. The other leaped over the druid's head, dropping a weighted net that pinned him to the ground. Another giant toad barreled past Ukushaza's magical trap and launched into Britamar's back, slamming into her with a loud thud. The mountain of a woman staggered, dropping to a knee. The horde of bullywugs she had been keeping at bay seized the opening, webbed hands grabbing and slimy bodies piling onto her until she collapsed under their weight. Sprezio heard a splash behind him and turned around just in time to see the darkness of a large, open mouth. God's damn it! After what felt like an eternity of semi-consciousness in the darkness, Sprezio's eyes were hit with a dull, reddish light, and he felt the sensation of sliding forward. He landed with a plop on a muddy floor. Sprezio wiped his eyes and quickly tried to take in his surroundings. He was in a damp, earthen chamber of some sort, with flickering torches clumsily set into the walls. In front of him was a wide woolen platform that raised slightly above the mucky floor. Both sides of the platform were piled with small, muddy mountains of smudged coins and tarnished trinkets. In the center stood a high-backed chair, its paint chipped and faded, and its cushion ripped and almost completely drained of feathers. Sprezio wiped more filth from his forehead and turned to his left, seeing one of the giant toads from before. It coughed up a large blob of mucus and bile. The blob raised two short arms and let out a scream. I'll kill ya! I'll kill every last one of you slippery bastards! The blob took two shaky steps forward, then collapsed to the muddy floor. Well then, glad to know you're alive, Trina. As usual, it seems Timora is smiling her luck down upon you. Two more bullywugs dragged in a battered Ukushaza, free of the net but now with his hands shackled. He waved a claw. Ah, hello, my dear friends, he said weakly. I feared that you had been digested. You and me both, replied Sprezio. Any word on what happened to Lord Siegfried? He heard another retching sound to his right. Another giant toad regurgitated a larger, slimier blob, which began whimpering as soon as it hit the floor. Right, still accounted for. Now what in the God's name did they do with fair Britomar? The group turned to look behind them as the room began to fill with the sound of pattering footsteps and clanking chains. 8 bullywugs, all dressed similarly to the 2 that walked in before, dragged a hulking figure across the floor. It was covered in rusty chains from shoulder to foot and had a filthy black sack placed over its head. Low, angry growls emanated from beneath the stained black cloth. The bullywug guards dragged Britomar next to Sprezio and lowered her to the ground, heaving her body onto her side. One of the guards grabbed the back of the sack and yanked it off her head, letting out a small peep as it hopped backwards. Britomar blinked as her eyes adjusted to the light, meeting Sprezio's gaze. Well, hello there. Oh, you are prettier sight than the inside of that filthy thing. I could almost give you a kiss, she said, flashing him a wide grin, bullywug blood staining her front teeth. Tempting as that might be, Sprezio said, warily eyeing her glistening teeth, I'm just happy you're still in one piece. The guards formed 2 lines on either side of the archway in the back of the room as one blew into a conch shell. In unison, they puffed out their chests and tapped the bottom of their spears twice on the muddy ground. Down the aisle hopped a large, bloated bullywug wearing a sagging purple vest over its mud-stained shirt. Its shoulders were draped in moldering furs, while its feet were shod in a pair of once regal slippers that were clearly too small. Its head was adorned with a small tiara, the shaped glass stones set into it covered with various cracks and blemishes. The bullywug hopped in front of each of Sprezio's companions, smirking as it inspected them. It let out a chirruping laugh as it turned and hopped up on the wooden platform, slumping into its makeshift throne. It pointed at the group and began croaking loudly, gesturing wildly above its head with its cane. As his companions looked around in confusion, Sprezio, suddenly struck with inspiration, began rummaging through his satchel. Aha! I knew picking up one of these would pay off eventually. He held up a scroll sealed with the symbol of 2 ears and a mouth. He unfurled it and began reciting the spell it contained, purple arcane sigils forming and hanging in the air as he spoke. All at once, they vanished. Sprezio inhaled deeply, the croaks of the bloated bullywug rapidly transforming to words in his ears. And that is why, wretched and weak trespassers, that you are here. Now cower before the glory of the dreadlord Maleficent Gluck, first of his clutch, bringer of moist bounties, chosen of Romanos, he who hops to touch the heavens. Sprezio's companions looked at him expectantly, their confused expressions making it obvious that they had not understood a word of what was just said. Just bow your heads, Sprezio whispered. This frog thinks he's their king, or something. Bow our heads, cried the young lord. I think not. I was dragged here against my will, in a toad's mouth, no less. Shh, Trina hissed, as she shoved Siegfried's head down. Stow it, thickhead. They may not understand what we're saying, but they'll understand your tone. Let Sprezio do the talking. It's what he's good for. She looked at Sprezio and gave him a look that said, Get to it. Poor, weak, tiny invaders. I see that my presence has left you speechless, condescended the bullywug king. But fear not, for I am a merciful mucklord, and I will allow you to plead your case. The bullywug king peered at the group with one eye open, as if he was peeking to make sure they were still listening. With a short sigh, Sprezio prepared to give his finest performance. O great and mighty muck lord, dreadlord Maleficent Gluck, Sprezio recited. We humble travelers were merely endeavoring to lead this young man home, when we stupidly got lost and stumbled into your magnificent swamplands. We did not mean to cause offense, your moistiness. Yes, your kind are very stupid, aren't they? They cannot hunt or track as well as our kind can. That I can forgive. But what I cannot forgive is the murder of several of our best warriors. Restitution must be made. Despite the bullywug king's attempt to frame this loss as trivial, Sprezio could tell that he was scared of losing more members of his tribe. He wanted them out of there as much as they did, but it was obvious his position prevented from simply asking nicely. "Well, your hoppiness, what will you have of us?" "Tribute!" thundered King Guruk. The bullywug guards began to croak and hoot with glee. Their king basked in the cacophony for a few moments, then held up a webbed hand to silence them. "Tribute or service? Your groveling has brought a merciful tear to my eye, so I will let you choose." Sprezio looked to his companions for input. The young lord crossed his arms. "I'm not giving a single copper to that thing," he said, pointing his nose up in the air. "But I suppose we can run an errand for this brute. It probably wants us to fetch it a snack or something." The adventurers mumbled and shrugged their approval. "O great and inexplicably moist king, we modestly request to perform an act of service to pay our debt," Sprezio said, with a low bow. "We are hard of good or coins, you see, and wouldn't want to insult your lordship with too paltry a tithe." Yes, I knew you would make good vassals for my glorious domain. You shall cleanse the realm of the long-hated, rusted scourge. And should you succeed, you shall receive rewards of the highest order." The group had been walking through the cave for what felt like an hour, finding their way by torchlight and the rays cast from a magical orb Sprezio had conjured on the tip of Britamar's sword. They stopped as they heard the cave start to echo with the horrible sound of grinding steel and wrenching hinges. "Look alive!" Britamar said, pointing the Empress towards the sound. Out of the shadows creaked a large, bull-looking creature made entirely of metal. Patches of rust covered its body and joints, which squealed as it advanced towards them. It exhaled a small burst of green steam, then bellowed at the adventurers. "Right, let's take this hell's damn thing apart and bring its head back to the frog," Sprezio shouted. His companions nodded, then charged forward, battle cries leaping from their lips. Sprezio pulled a scroll from his satchel, this one sporting a seal that shimmered in the light. "You know, I have been meaning to find a reason to give this one a try." Sprezio grinned, then broke the seal.
Thanks for joining us on Browsing the Bestiary. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes and check out our Patreon at Browsing the Bestiary, all one word.
There you can keep up to date on any new pod-related announcements, access reference pages for each episode, and download character sheets for characters featured in our story times. You can also comment on what you think the next monster will be, and if you get it right, you'll get inspiration.
And if you're something of a lore master yourself, you can offer us corrections for any facts we got wrong. If you catch something we missed, you may get a shout out in a future episode.
Remember to cite your sources.
I'm Dungeon Mistress Jade.
And I'm Lore Master Andy.
Until next time, may your dice rolls be high
and your adventurers ever prepared.